like that. Hey, everybody. Super
Hi.
excited to have my roommates here. We're missing one, and we're missing Summer Baker from Tampa. Roommates when we went to Alabama in October, when I had a fabulous time getting to know more and more agents across the United States and Canada. So these were my roommates. So what better to talk about relocation and the importance of working together, right? So if you're trying to sell a house in Wilmington and you're moving to Texas, then I would refer you to Tiffany, and then Tiffany and I would work hand in hand to make sure your experience was fabulous. So I would get your house sold and then let her know what was happening, and we could work together to find you a home in Texas while your house is being sold here, or vice versa for Louisiana. So thank you, ladies, for joining me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited. So Tiffany's been on before, but Jesse, I'm glad that you can make it today.
Yes. First time. I got invited.
Yeah.
I'm excited, y'all, like I am, and then I get to see y'all's faces.
I am glad that you're here. So we were just talking before we started about a client. So I do think we should have like funny client moments for just a second. But my funny client moment was my only fan client, who is precious, 19 years old. 19 years old. My girl makes $70,000 a month. If you don't know what OnlyFans is, I didn't either. Google it. It's an interesting website. But anyway, 70,000.
And you were saying you don't know exactly what her OnlyFans is, but she obviously is good at it.
Yeah, so I did ask her a little bit about it, and I was scared to ask her exactly what she did for it. But she did tell me that, because I asked her if it was pornography, and she said so it can be, it doesn't have to be. And then I asked her why people would subscribe and pay for the subscription, and she said basically it's because they're making friends, right? So you would pay the subscription, she would get a portion of that fee per month. Then the second part that she gets paid for is somebody could DM her. I guess it's called DM. It would be like in my world called DM. And DM her and ask her to do specific things in like a chat room. And if she did those things or whatever, I guess she gets paid extra money for doing that. Anyway, $70,000 a month. Man, I was like, I had lunch with her today and I was trying to figure out what I have that somebody might want to see. I'm teasing. I really am teasing.
Look, I saw a TikTok today where the girl was like, "Oh, I make a bunch, like over 100 a month doing swimming videos for OnlyFans."
Yeah,
well, I'm sure they're probably not appropriate, but
yeah, somebody else said it could be feet things. She just said it could be with somebody or without somebody. She said hers was without people. Anyway, just interesting. Okay, enough about that. It was,
the things you learn in real estate.
Yeah, we could seriously write a book, get everybody, all of our people across the United States and Canada to give us like 2 crazy stories, and they would all be 100% real. The general public would never believe it.
Yep.
Right.
Very true.
It's fun. Anyway, so we're talking about the differences in the 3 states. And so last week, usually when I do this, I definitely talk about trends and real estate trends. But last week with Sia and, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. My mind just went blank who was with me last week. But we talked about more along the lines of transactions in real estate and differences. And I was amazed at, I know it was Jennifer Reno from New Jersey, but we were talking about the differences in the 3 states. And there are a lot of differences. And I didn't fully understand what they were. And it's super important for us to know so that we can help the general public in making that move. We need to know from state to state what those expectations are, because they are different in every state. Yes. So what about you guys? If you were to write an offer today and just say it's conventional loan, everything's normal, how long is your closing period?
So I think this topic's really great because, Jesse, I feel you probably have people moving, since we know so many agents, we work with a lot of referrals. We have people moving for different reasons, companies relocating into our state, and understanding what their state is like is actually very helpful. So getting to know all these agents across the country has been very helpful because it is so different. So their expectations when they come in, they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be like this. So understanding what Texas does different helps me set their expectations and help them walk through the process so they're not completely overwhelmed. One thing that Texas does, and I don't know about Louisiana, but they're very buyer friendly. So we have what's called a termination option period once you enter into the contract. I know some states don't have it fully the full option to terminate, but we have an unrestricted right. So they change their mind, they get cold feet, anything during that option period they can terminate. So it really protects the buyer.
How long is that option period?
So it's negotiable. I mean, when the market was really hot, we were putting 2 or 3 days and making sure our inspector was lined up. But I mean, it's back to normal. We used to see 10 to 12. We don't really see that as much anymore. Just to be more negotiable, I try to put 7 on there, and that's plenty of time for us to get the inspector in, get the report back, try to negotiate the repairs. Now, if we come up with an issue, we had one recently where, my buyer, there was a roof issue. So we had to get a specialist out there to look at everything, get it quoted out. So we did ask for an extension on that. But typically we can wrap it up in that time period and then move forward so the seller knows that they're moving towards closing as well.
If the buyer terminates within that 7 days or whatever that negotiated time frame is, do they lose anything?
So in the state of Texas, they have to pay something for their option fee, but it's usually very minimal. So for instance, they may pay, 1% earnest money. It used to be that you could pay $1,000. It's much more than that now. You would get your earnest money back, which is the larger portion, but you would pay something for the option period, which would be, a couple $100 up to $500. I mean, if it's super negotiable, you might put more than that, but that would be all that you would lose plus the cost of your inspection. But you would be able to fully terminate the contract.
Like that?
It is. Yes, it is.
That is hard. Is it me that's making? Can y'all hear the double sound?
Yeah.
A little, but it's not horrible.
Okay. It sounds kind of horrible to me. I'm like, whoa. So it sounds like our due diligence period, which is the right to terminate. And it is,
yes.
And it's a negotiated time frame. I usually do like 21 days because ours also includes the loan and appraisals and everything. So
is yours part of it though, that the seller has the right to repair some of the items?
Oh yeah, the seller can repair, but the way our contract reads is that everything being sold in North Carolina is being sold as is in the condition it was the day that the buyer saw it or better. So right. If it needs a new roof, right, that we can negotiate that. Seller can say, yes, I'll fix it, or no, they won't. The buyer has the right to terminate at that point if they're not happy with that decision.
So in our state, the seller could say, we'll put a new roof on it, and the buyer could say, I still don't want the house. And
right.
They can terminate.
Yes, that's
you can't in yours. Okay.
Yeah, can terminate for any reason or no reason, as long as they do so in writing within the due diligence time frame.
And what about you, Jessie?
That's ours. So typically our due diligence period is.
You do have a due diligence. You call it due diligence?
We call it a due diligence period.
I thought we were the only state. Okay, cool.
So ours is negotiable. So usually we do 10 to 12, depending. I mean, if I know that the house is in a rougher condition and I'm going to need quotes from everybody and their mother, I'm going to put 14 plus days. But typically 10 days and we're cut out. We don't have to pay anything. If they decide they just don't want it anymore, they can walk away, and it just is what it is. There's no money held for anybody. If there is a deposit, it goes back to the buyer and everybody just moves forward. So, and then, yes, so it has to be, like Jim was saying, the house has to be in the same condition. It's as is, but we can negotiate repairs, but it is not, the seller can say, I don't want to repair anything. It's an as is sale, but.
Yeah.
And we technically have that as is in the contract too. But I mean, it is as is, but you have the right to negotiate. So everyone usually, will try. When the market was really hot, we just told them, hey, you can do the inspection, but you're probably not getting any repairs. Yeah. So it's all negotiable based on the market conditions for sure.
Absolutely.
Thankfully, in a position where we could start asking for repairs a little bit more, unless it's just a really hot property. I mean, we have some that we can negotiate on, and we have others that are still like, it's just a great property and they are still getting those awesome offers.
Right. And see, we can close a conventional loan in 21 days. Inspections, everything, we're done. So, I mean, that's if everything's lined out and all the inspections and everything are good. But, typically 30 days is a closing.
Yeah, that's us too. Typically 30 days. Typically, I'll do 30 days in a 21 day due diligence period. Because with us, it says after that due diligence time frame, then you would lose your earnest money if you terminated after it.
So your buyers in North Carolina can back out for all of those reasons up to 21 days. That's crazy. Because
anytime I see a really short, I mean, it'll take me a week to get an inspection back, but an appraisal will take me 3 weeks to get it back.
How does the seller pack and get ready and move on time? That's stressful.
Yeah.
Ours complain here, and I'm like, we have compared to what I've heard. I mean, obviously, we have a lot more time than other people. Once we're past that option period, unless something happens with their loan, which typically, doesn't, because we make sure we get the pre-approval letter. But I mean, things happen. We're usually pretty good. Obviously, you have the appraisal. We still have some appraisal waiver. We have an appraisal waiver for our contract, but we still have some people using that. So just depending on how the contract was written.
Yeah.
So.
And then do you guys have the escalation clause? We don't have that in North Carolina.
We don't. It's not in our contracts. Some people try to use it, but it doesn't always work. So.
Right.
So it's not even recognized in North Carolina. And actually, when I called the commission to see if I could use some version of it, I was told no, here we couldn't, because it's also telling everybody what the best offer is, which is also a no-no here. So everybody has to have the same advice, which is we're in multiple offers, bring your highest and best.
Yeah.
And then we go for it from there.
Jesse, what do you?
It should be. We don't really. You can use an escalation clause, but it's not practiced much here.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: I had multiple offers recently on a house, and we had an escalation clause, but their initial offer was so much less than the people that came in higher that my sellers were like, "Why would I not go with the people that upfront felt comfortable putting this offer in?" Right. And so, the buyers will always say, well, why did I even had someone that came to the open house that was like, well, why would they not take my offer? I'm like, they can take any offer they wanted, but they took the offer that they were most comfortable, in that situation, because the other buyer was so strong right out of the gate, and they just felt comfortable. Like, if they're that confident that they're willing to pay that, then we're going with them. Because the escalation clause on that one was $1,000. So like, over $1,000, we're not going to take someone else's offer when they weren't willing to offer that up front.
There you go.
So,
and I've had multiple sellers that they did not want to do a highest and best. They're like, oh, we have 2 offers. We like this one. It's what we want. We're moving on. And, I suggest highest and best to them, but they're like, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to take it and move on with my life. I'm like, that's your choice, bud. We can do that.
All the people that are saying hi. So I see my friend Rob Little from Las Vegas. Tell me what you see in your area. Like, how long does it take to close? What is the practice? Do you have a due diligence time frame? How do your inspections work? And then I see John Bellis from Arizona. Tell me what they do in Arizona. Don from Virginia. Come on, people, talk to me about what you're seeing in your state.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how different it is. There's a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences.
Absolutely. So far, the 3 of us seem to be the most similar. So a typical closing for you, Jesse, you said 30 days, and you too, Tiffany, like just on average?
Typically, I mean, I will tell you, I only have a few lenders that can close in 21 days. So for Jesse to say that's typical for them, that's awesome.
Well, like you said, it's got to be a good lender, and all the things have to be in
true.
line.
That's more.
But you know what?
If you're planning a 21-day close, it's up front. Like, hey, we've got to move and groove. Everything's lined out. So typically it's 30, but if you come to me with 21, we can do it. But it has to be where everything is lined up right. Like going into the contract, hey, we got to do this. We only have 3 weeks. this lender is going to push it, and it's a local lender every time that's going to push it to get it closed.
Yeah. I have a local lender that can get things closed. He sometimes will take their application and put them in underwriting. If they're a great buyer, he'll put them into underwriting so that when I go to put an offer, I could say, hey, they're already in underwriting. We can turn around and close this very quickly. That is rare. It obviously helps me on the negotiating side because not everybody has a lender like that. But typically 30 days is what to expect for our market.
That's what we have too. However, I would tell you, like I have a new agent on the team that she just did like a 25-day closing. So we do see those. However, it was a nightmare. It's still a nightmare because things came up on the inspection. Seller didn't have a chance to fix them. Now more things have come up. It was supposed to close today. If they didn't close today, the interest rates were going to go up. Oh my God. It was like one of those things like holy cow.
That's stressful
Don't
too.
do that. Don't do it. Just do a 30-day close. Let's just make sure we have enough time to breathe for a second. So then what about inspections? What inspections are pretty typical for your areas? Like home inspection, but anything other outside of the home inspection?
You do foundation. So what I do is I have the initial inspector come, but then I always line up the AC and roof because we have a lot of hailstorms. Like, we had a crazy storm last night that came from Texas all the way over to where Jesse is in Louisiana. But also the AC. It's funny to me when people move here and they're like, do you have AC in your houses? I'm like, we can't live without AC. And then they're like, do you have heat? And I'm like, we can't live without heat either. It actually gets cold here. I do bring in like, specialized inspectors for some of those things right out of the gate, just because they're so important. But then foundation, if it's in an area of town that doesn't typically have, a lot of foundation issues, unless if it's super sensitive to the buyer, then we bring them in. But if the initial inspector doesn't see any signs to warrant a foundation repair or getting anybody else to look at it, then we don't typically do that because sometimes they have to pay for those additional and you can get really high. We have stucco homes here, but we have a lot of moisture. So we present to the buyer and say, do you want to have the stucco inspector up front, or do you want the initial inspector to tell you if there's any signs? Some people just say, I want it inspected no matter what. It starts about $1,000 for a stucco inspection, in addition to everything else. And then sometimes they say, you know what, let me see what the first inspector says first. And then sometimes we have follow-up. So
do you guys we do the home inspection, yes, and I will always get the HVAC inspected, which is another question I want to ask you in a second. But then we have termites here. Termites are a real thing. We have moist, sandy soil, so we have termite inspections, even if they have termite bond. Both of you.
I may not automatically order that. Like, I may not order a foundation inspection unless I just like going into it, like I can see, like I'm pretty sure we've got some problems. Let me go ahead and order that. But for sure, my number one, I'm always ordering a home inspection. I'm always ordering a termite inspection.
Okay, so saying that, it's funny because it's so normal that we always do that. I didn't think to list that. But when I order a regular home inspection, it comes with a pest control termite inspection. And then if it has a pool, it always has a pool inspection. Like those three are standard with my regular inspectors. And then anything else, AC, roof, I get other people for that.
Now, what about radon? We don't have radon here. Well, we don't. We might have radon, but nobody around here inspects for radon. So do you guys?
I haven't come across it.
Yeah, me either.
Now, do you inspect for other wood destroying insects? Because that's what our report
is. Wood destroying, yes. WDIS.
We have carpenter bees pretty badly. Like right now, it's like out of control.
We have carpenter ants also, and the house I bought had carpenter ants, but it was so weird because it was only in an interior door. We couldn't figure out. They didn't come through the house. It had to have been like that they replaced the door and they were in the door already. So my inspector was like, what do you want to do with this? And they go, we could try to fix the door. I go, no, I'm going to throw the door away and I will buy a new door because I do not want carpenter ants. Like, I don't want any chance. So just like,
I have a funny story. So so you'll have to track this for over a 2-year period. So hold on. Had a buyer who ended up buying a for sale by owner. And yes, he did pay me separately to represent him as the buyer. We did all the inspections, including the home inspection and wood destroying insects inspection. He bought the house. His wife had just died. His whole background story is had been married like 42 years and his wife died. So he did what a lot of men do. He bought this home to be near his grandkids, and immediately within 10 months got married. She did not like the small home that he bought, so he put it back on the market with me, right? We sold it to a buyer that was represented by my team. That buyer was saving money and did not want to do the pest inspection. It was going to save her $75. Luckily, whenever somebody tells me they don't want to do an inspection, that's a pretty standard inspection, I have an attorney draft something saying I highly recommended it, and they did not want to do it.
Absolutely.
And I had everybody sign it, right? So luckily I did that. So 2 years after that, so after they had bought, they had $6,000 worth of wood destroying beetles. So crazy enough that it was a townhouse. So the HOA, it was supposed to be bonded, inspected, exterminated by the HOA, which never happened. But she turned around and tried to sue me, saying that I knew that it had this damage, and that is the reason that seller sold within 10 months. And then I had to go back and say, no, well, when they bought it, they did the inspection and there was nothing there. And when they sold it, as far as they knew, it was nothing there. And here's the document that you signed saying you did not have this inspection done. And it was an older couple. And I kind of felt bad for him because she was like, you mean I signed something? And I was like, yes, you did, in the office with the attorney.
And you didn't want to have it. But I mean, 2 years later, that could have happened at any time. They could have had the inspection. But it is good peace of mind, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I've had this happen many times where we've had a roof inspector come out. We had the regular inspection, plus we have a roof inspection with photos. This actually helped me at my house too, but I've had this so many times where then, a little bit later or a couple of years down the road, you have a hailstorm and your insurance company will try to say, and I had that happen to me personally, and the insurance company tried to say it was 2 years from, before I bought the house. And I'm like, nope, here's all my reports. Here's all the pictures. And I had my buyers, have the same thing. And so even though there weren't any repairs at that time, they had that information to use later on. That was beneficial. Or if they go to sell the house, they were able to say, hey, when I bought it, it was in good condition. So
then let me ask you, does an attorney do your closings or a title company?
Well, title, but attorney checks everything and typically does it. So we have title attorneys.
Okay. So then you're in your area, how involved, and I'm asking this because I thought it was really interesting that New York, New York, I don't even understand how, I sat there and talked to them for 2 hours. I'm still confused, but an attorney does everything, negotiates the contract, writes up the contract, is highly involved in every single aspect. And in the process, I could say, hey, attorney, these are the terms that we've come up with as buyer and seller. This is what we agree on. They write it all up. In the process, while they're writing it up, if it takes a few days and another offer comes in, we're not under contract. So that's in New York. Here, we do. Here, we use the North Carolina standard offer to purchase, and we write it. And the attorney, as soon as we go under contract, we give it to the attorney, but they don't really get involved with it until a few days before closing. What about you guys?
Ooh. We don't use attorneys. So we write all our what?
You're a title state?
Title state. And they'll sign something at closing that says that the attorney that prepared this document did not work for you. They literally only prepare the document for the title company. We use promulgated forms. We prepare all the paperwork, all the amendments, all the negotiating. We send it to the title company. The title company researches the title and the background to make sure there's no liens or encumbrances on the property. and then the attorneys just prepare the documents for closing. And there's a waiver that they have to sign saying that they understand that attorney does not work for them, that only prepared the documents. So we don't use attorneys in our process unless someone has a question. We have a disclaimer that they have the right to contact an attorney to ask their questions, but that's the only time that an attorney usually gets involved, unless it's maybe a different type of property or a higher price property and they just want their attorney to review it. And again, then they're just reviewing it and then getting back to us, but not really involved in the process.
See, it's interesting. So our sellers are not really represented by an attorney. Sellers just get the deed preparation done by the attorney, but not represented by an attorney. But the buyers are. What about with you, Jesse?
Well, I'm trying to wrap my head around that, because when we get our contracts all put together, then I'll send it to the title attorney, and they'll pull the abstract and the title insurance policies are written through them, and they prepare all the closing documents with the bank, balance the CDs, all that together.
See, that's what an attorney does for us. An attorney does exactly that, but it's an attorney. It's
they
not
don't really
title attorney.
represent anybody. They're just there to make sure that their clouds or liens, and doc prep is kind of what they do.
Yeah, and see, we just send it to the title company. I'm sure they have their own attorneys, but we don't ever we don't call them title attorneys. We don't talk to them. We speak to our escrow officers and their assistants. And that's how we do it.
And I know Texas has buyer agency. Does Louisiana?
Yes.
They do. Because I know Florida, and you're Floridians, I mess you up too, but I don't think that they do. I think that they are transaction agents.
Well, aren't we all going to have buyer agency agreements nationally?
I think so.
I mean, we've had buyer representation agreements for a long time. Ours were optional, but for me, they were never really optional. Like, I would always present them to the buyer and explain it to them. So not to get into all that, but those changes for me, I think it's going to be good for I don't know how it is in other states, but for our state, I think it's going to be good, because then we're all going to be on the same page.
Yeah, here, different states do it differently, but I know North Carolina, I've been in real estate 17 years and I've never known it without buyer agency. So I'm not even sure how long it's been a part of it, but I know for at least 17 years, it's been there. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out, but
yeah,
so then what else? What are some other differences? So your contracts, they're standard forms from your state, provided by the state. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you both have title companies of some sort to do them. And then it seems like we have similar inspections. What about insurance? And the reason why I asked that, because here we have to get, and you were talking about hail, we have to get wind and hail insurance. And a lot of people are not used to that insurance.
Nope, we have that for sure.
We do too.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Jesse, but we're probably very similar on this. Our insurance has totally gone through the roof, and you can't get coverage.
Florida.
To use my example, I had to fight for almost a year to get my roof replaced. They offered the policy. I had a zero depreciated value of my roof. My roof was 18 years old, and I got a hailstorm 2 years later. They tried to say that the hailstorm was from 4 years before, which it wasn't. I was home at the time, had photos, videos, bought it. My roofer actually got a public adjuster to help me. I got it replaced. I've since had to change insurance companies, because even with them not wanting to replace it, they were going to raise my premium by more than 50%. Now I have a different company, and me personally, I always like a lower deductible, because I've had things happen, had some trees fall down in a windstorm.
I remember when that happened. I was with you in California.
No, in New Orleans. We were at Luxury in New Orleans last year, and we had a huge storm in Houston. And I had some trees. Thankfully, they fell in my garage and my car, but not my house. But now, hail and wind, I have a 5% deductible. They will not give me a 1% deductible anymore. And my insurance person can't find any, I need to look into it more. But so our insurance is changing as we go all the time, right? And I think all three of us were closer, we deal with hail or not hail too, but like being closer to the coast with wind and hurricanes and things like that. So our insurance is changing. It definitely is interesting. A lot of carriers have left our area, so it limits.
18 have gone out of business. So that's what my boyfriend does.
That's true too. A lot of them have left because they're going out of business. So that's a challenge too, that we try to, have multiple professional resources in that area too, so that we can help our clients have the best coverage there, and being familiar with it. Some people get a high deductible, and that's great, and all your premiums lower until you actually have a problem. So it's a personal choice. My personal choice is I want to come out of pocket less. Like the whole point of having insurance is that
so it doesn't
protects you when you need it. Yeah.
We had a problem in 2020 we had a super bad hailstorm. And of course, the whole time it's hitting the house, I'm like, oh, I'm getting a new roof. Yay. But it broken windows. It did some serious damage.
Yeah.
Well, people were starting GoFundMes because they didn't realize that their deductible was going to be 5%, 6% of the value of their house. They had no idea. And
it's important. And I talk to my clients, my buyers, especially out of state, and talk to them about, it's important to explore your options and really understand, what kind of deductibles you're getting, because it can hit you when it's the worst and you have a lot to deal with. And that's one more thing. So sometimes you can't control it. Like my wind hail deductible has gone up, but my other coverage is still at 1%. So, I'm dealing with trying to figure that out myself. And sometimes you just can't get, without going too crazy on your premium, you can't get that. So I'm going to hope that I don't have any more wind hail storms, since I've already had 2, and hope that doesn't happen again, because I've never had it happen in, a very long time, and then had it back to back. So
it's just been crazy with weather. But of course, up here we have to deal with not only worried about hurricanes coming, but also tornadoes. Like right now it's tornado season. Like it is what it is. Last night we're pretty sure there was one right across the river from us. It was heading this way, and then we end up just getting straight line winds of 70 miles an hour.
And that can be scary too. We don't get tornadoes as bad as some of the other parts of the country, but we had tornadoes last night as well, and tornado warnings. And obviously Jennifer Bullock, we have our good friend Jenna in Nebraska, that she is good and safe, but we were messaging her from their tornadoes. So that can be obviously devastating. Thankfully, we don't have anything. I've never seen anything quite like that in our area. I know we've had some over the years, but not to that extent, thankfully.
So Don says they're still seeing multiple offers. They have an escalation clause. Virginia is the one that told me about the escalation clause, and they're closing loans in 2 weeks or less. Is that what that says?
Yeah, that's what she put on there. That's awesome. We have to jump through hoops and have everything ready to go before we go under contract if we were to attempt to get that. But ours would probably be a 21-day would be a fast close. Yeah, we can close if it's cash. We can close as soon as we can get the title work done, and we're not waiting on attorneys. So it's sometimes a little bit quicker.
Right.
So
then John Bellis in Arizona says 10 days can be negotiated shorter or longer for the due diligence to do all the inspections. Wow. This does not include appraisal contingencies. Usually the appraisal is ordered after the inspections are complete and all repairs are negotiated. Interesting. That's a good point, actually. So I don't negotiate my repairs until after I get the appraisal. I try to do everything at one time.
Wow.
So we're like John. We're like John.
Because I don't order appraisal until we have worked out repairs. Because
but what if the appraisal's low?
We're not going.
So for us, they don't want to pay for the appraisal if we don't know that we're going to get through the inspection period. If there's a question, we might say to the lender, hey, hold off. We had to, we're still negotiating repairs and we need to make sure we're going forward with it. Then once we order the appraisal, if we did not do an appraisal waiver and the appraisal comes in low, then the buyer has the right to terminate, but they could also try to work it out with the seller, try to negotiate, or say to the seller, you pay for it, or I'm not, or I'm going to terminate, then the seller can say, then yes, I'll work with you, or no, I won't. So sometimes you do have to get through that also.
See, with us, how long does it take for your appraisals to come back? Because ours is taking 3 weeks.
Oh, 10 days max.
Yeah, we're not that long. I mean, we can get an appraisal. It's usually, we can get it back in a week, but you can put a rush on it. You could be quicker, or if they're backed up, they do take, a little bit longer, but I've never had one take 3 weeks. Thank God.
Ours usually take 3 weeks, and I order everything at the exact same time. Because literally when I get the appraisal, I want to make sure it appraises too, because I want to negotiate everything up front. But I've never actually had anybody negotiate with me until they have the appraisal. Because to me, I want to know that it has appraised before. I'm not going to give you $10,000 worth of repairs and then it appraises $15,000 low.
We have to be aware of that. So like as selling agent, as a listing agent, if I am worried about appraisal, if we're pushing the comps and we do not have an appraised or an appraisal waiver, if we have an appraisal waiver, it's great. We're like, home free, right? But if we don't, then I'm always cautious with the seller, like, hey, we need to think about this because we're pushing the comps. If it doesn't appraise, you may have to renegotiate. So let's think about how we're going to address the repairs. And sometimes if they come, out swinging with the repairs, and maybe the house really needed it, maybe it didn't. If we say, hey, we're going to agree to this, sometimes we preface it with, full disclosure, like if something else comes up, we may not be giving additional funds, or, you guys have to be willing to work with us too. So it's situational. I really like the appraisal waivers as a listing agent, obviously. So I try to get those, but it doesn't always happen. And then I don't know if you do this, Jesse, but since we're more similar where our appraisals come after, especially if I want to hold the deal together, even if we have an appraisal waiver, I still want them to have a smooth process. I make sure that the appraiser has, maybe I'll just leave it for them, or if they contact me and I can email them, I'll make sure they have a list of all the improvements of the property, and information that might help them make their job easier, because I want it to appraise, especially if you don't have an appraisal waiver. But even if we do have an appraisal waiver, and I'm not worried about from the listing agent side, you still want the buyer to have a smooth transaction. So I try to have that aspect as well.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm like John. Like sometimes if we're real concerned, we won't start the repair work until the appraisal's back. But we don't have to have our repairs done until 5 days before closing. So that kind of helps. But if the appraisal comes back in low, I mean, most of the time we'll start renegotiating concessions.
Yeah.
So we do concessions. I mean, it's not 21 anymore. Sellers are given a lot more in concessions to get these things closed. So we might say, hey, look, we can't do all of it. So what would you like? We'll drop the price, but you're going to have to, sacrifice not having this, this, and this.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If you think it's a question, and usually we get the appraisal back we have like 2 more weeks to close. So then we work on repairs and things like that. I cannot imagine having all of those contingencies and being, a week to close. Like, how does your seller pack and plan and move and things like that? In North Carolina, that must be a little stressful.
Yeah, but see what I do, because typically we have a 21-day due diligence time frame when I can, if it's not multiple offer, there's some reasons. Sometimes I'll do it not so long, but typically 21 days is about typical for me personally. And honestly, I mean, the minute we go into contract, literally within 24 hours, I've sent it to the attorney. I've scheduled the inspections. Like I've sent it to the lender. I've done everything on my part within 21 days. I mean, within day 1 to get it all fast. So I'm not going to hold that information from a seller for 21 days. If I represent the buyer, and the minute I get the inspections back, I'm going to be working on them and say, hey, I'm not going to give you a formal repair request, not until I get the appraisal back, but here's a copy of the inspection. The buyer's given me the okay to share this with you. And these are the items that we are going to ask for once we know that it appraised. How does it,
yeah, I have a question. How does it work in your state? So
We do have a timeline, Brandon. We have to have it closed before closing. You have to have all the work done before closing and enough time that the buyers can have a reinspection. Go ahead.
Oh, reinspection. Yeah. I mean, we don't specifically have a timeline, but you have to have it done before closing. And if the buyer wants to have it reinspected and do their final walkthrough, you still have to have it ready. So I tell my sellers, don't wait till the last minute. And we help them with a lot of that. We offer to get, bids and, refer contractors if needed. I know some people aren't big on that, but we give them multiple options and try to help, move that process along for them. But once you present the inspection report to the listing agent, that seller has to disclose that report in our state for 4 years.
Yes.
So is it the same?
Oh, wow.
So
like ours, so once your due diligence is up, like say it's day 10, I have to send the seller a response saying this is what we want fixed. And they have 72 hours to respond to me on what they're going to do. And then it turns back that I have 72 hours to respond back to their response. And
see, you have a lot of
weird. It's like if you go to day 11, you put in a 10-day and you get to day 11, well, you're locked into that contract. Like,
yeah, agreed.
Whereas no repairs, deal with it.
Yeah, it's like that here, but we don't have this
way after if the seller doesn't respond back. I mean, it's just
so we have to have
in my opinion.
We don't have to have 72 hours. We have we have 2 dates. We have a due diligence date and a closing date, and everything has to be done and negotiated. Everything by the due diligence date, or like Jesse said, you're locked in. You can't ask for anything after that.
Well, even the appraisal, like if the appraisal comes in low, you have 2 days to renegotiate that, or you have a blank. You fill in a blank that says how many days, and I always
see we have. That's why we do 21 days. We don't do the back forth. You have 72 hours. You have this. We have 2 dates. That's the only 2 dates. Everything has to be done by the end of the due diligence timeframe. We don't have appraisers, everything.
Ours is kind of different than both of yours. We have the option period, but let's say it's 7 days or 10 days, but 7 days is very common right now. It actually says by 5 o'clock on that day, and holidays, weekends count, all of that. But we have to have everything negotiated by that point. There's no turn it in and wait. Like if it's 5 p.m., so we have to back out, at least a day or two before to send it to the seller to have them have time. But I mean, there's no time frame on that. And if we don't have a response from the seller and everything negotiated and signed off, we either have to terminate or extend. So like ours doesn't give you like a time period to review it. Everything has to be done during that time period.
So that's us. Same thing. It sounds like your option period is the same thing as our due diligence period.
Yes, I think it sounds like that, except for we don't do the appraisal and all of that in there. It's literally just for the inspections.
Yeah, we
very interesting,
including the appraisal.
And our
so many differences
also include getting insurance quotes, finding out those schools. Like, I mean, it's so much more than just a lot of
that's what
just to look at the house. I'm like, it's not just to look at the house, babe. It's
there's like 2 pages of our contract says buyer during the due diligence time frame. It is up to you. Anything that bothers you, whether you want a survey, an appraisal to go over the paperwork, school districts, zoning, whatever it is, all your inspections, this is your time to do it. And ours says 5 o'clock p.m. too, Tiffany. Like 5 o'clock p.m. on May 1st, it's done. So we don't have anything in our contract about like school zones and things like that. That's up to the buyers to determine that beforehand. Now they have the unrestricted right. So if they found out something during their option period, obviously they would be able to terminate. But insurance quotes, any of that is not in the contract. It's not contingent on it. So that's why, again, I tell people it's so important to get that information before we even go under contract on a house and be familiar with, and work with an agent that's familiar with your area. So about the schools and you can get insurance quotes or, I've got insurance people I can call and in a few minutes they can give me information or a couple hours or however it is, but they can give me information on some of the houses. What? We don't have contingencies. I mean, it says I guess everything is contingent upon this, but there's no true contingency because everything, even if you have to sell your house, is now part of our contract. That it says your house is listed or it will be listed or you're doing for sale by owner or it's under contract and all you put all of that into the contract, but there's no true contingencies on in our contract. It says you have the due diligence time frame to do everything you need to do. Inspections, appraisals, whatever it is. That is what you have.
Yeah.
You can terminate for any reason or no reason.
You have to sell your house for any reason. That's a whole nother addendum that gets attached.
Yeah.
So that was us last year, or no, 2 years ago. We had a whole separate addendum 2 years ago, but now I'll send you over a copy of our contract. And now it binds it, it's all bound into the offer to purchase.
So our contingencies, if a buyer makes an offer with a contingent sale or the offer is contingent on the sale of their house, it's a separate addendum, like Jesse said. But it also protects the seller because the seller has the right to continue to market the property. And then if they receive an offer, it has within blank days, so like 3 to 5 days, which I usually obviously put the lower amount or want the lower amount, but that the buyer has to either the seller has 3 days to notify them, and then basically the buyer does. I'm getting confused on that, but essentially they have to remove the contingency or they have to pay additional earnest money to move forward. Wow. But it's a completely separate addendum. So if it's not included in the contract, it is not contingent on the sale of their house.
Interesting.
I mean, we have a box to click to check on our contract that if it is contingent or not, but then you have to attach the addendum with it.
See, ours used to be like that. That was us 2 years ago. They changed it. I'm gonna send you over what we have today.
That's very interesting too.
Different, right?
Got so many different, like I can put days in there for title work. Like let's say there's a cloud on the title. Well, it automatically there's a line to put a certain amount of days, and it automatically extends the contract past the original close date that we put in the contract if there's something wrong with title that needs to be cleared up. And I've had a lot of people like, well, we're walking away, we can't close on time. I'm like, actually, no, I can sue you for this. You cannot walk away. You put in here this time frame, so you're going to abide by it.
So one more question for you girls. That might be derogatory. I didn't mean it derogatory. I'm sorry. I like when people call me a girl. I don't know. I went and had lunch today and somebody carded me. I told him I wanted to kiss him. I was like, can I kiss you? Really?
I love it.
But anyway, the question I have is, does your contract stipulate, like, do you have an exact closing date?
Yes.
Do you too? Yes. And then does it stipulate, like, if it doesn't close on this date, you have X amount of days to get it? So ours, they give you 7 days. It's like, this is a hard, fast closing date, but if something happens, you have within 7 days to still be under the contract.
We have to do if we want to pass that date. So you better go into it with, don't ask for a 14-day close if you're not going to make a 14-day close. The seller may say, you didn't close on time. I'm going to go with somebody else, at this time.
And keep your earnest money. We don't, what Jesse said, with the title, we do have like a couple of, like, however many days for reviewing the title work, but it does not extend our closing. So there's no, like, once a closing date is set, unless we have an extension or an amendment for the extension to change that, we do not change the closing date. And it happens a lot that we have to extend the closing date and all parties work together, but you want to make sure to get that amendment signed, because if not, you're out of contract. So.
Wow.
And our extension is only if there's a problem with title.
Or
lien, and nothing.
The automatic one. It's so interesting, all the differences, and it really does help when you have people moving from different places, and you can help understand what their expectations are and explain how it is in your state. It makes the process a lot smoother.
So it's funny. I had a referral from New York, and that's when I was learning about all the differences with New York. And it was really good, because then when I got my next referral from New York, I knew that they were going to be upset that they didn't talk to the attorney from the very beginning, and I knew why. So I was able to explain that, hey, North Carolina, we're not New York. we do it totally opposite, you know, and set those expectations for North Carolina. But yeah, it's fabulous. So if you have a referral, if you have a client, if you have a friend, if you have a sister, if you have a father that lives in another state and they want to sell and they don't have a real estate agent and they don't know what to do, can always call one of the three of us, text us, FaceTime us, Facebook us, whatever, get, smoke signals. We can answer those too. Because we really do take the time to go to these conferences and meet the top agents throughout the United States and Canada. I don't really have any agents. Hawaii too. We have Hawaii covered. We have Remax. They have a lot of countries covered. I just don't have that pool. I'm talking about what I have within my repertoire.
Not yet. Maybe one day.
I've got to start learning how to speak French or something.
Go to France. Find the Remax office.
Guys that come into these conferences are cute, but I never can talk to them because I can't speak it.
Crack me up.
Anyway. Start now taking lessons, and you'll be ready.
There you go. I don't really know anybody moving to France, but I wish I did.
Not yet. You never know.
That's true. That is.
It could come up. Someone listening right now.
No, you never know. That's exactly right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate y'all, and I loved our little roomie situation, although we were in bunk beds, which was a lot.
Hey, at least you were on the bottom because I was on the top.
You were on the top.
We'll never forget it. We'll never forget it.
Yes.
Hey, and we made friends and got to know people, and now we're learning about each other's market. So it was pretty cool.
That was awesome.
Good stuff. Yes.
Tell Renee, thank you for bringing us together.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, y'all have a great day and a wonderful week.
Thanks, sister.
You too. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. And you let me know if you have anybody moving to Wilmington, and I would definitely let you girls know in the same.
Absolutely.
Talk to y'all soon.
You got it.
Bye,
Great
guys.
seeing y'all.
You
Bye.
too.